The stars beyond Earth had always looked calm from a distance, but John Carter now knew they hid deep in ancient anger. He stood near the wide window of the human vessel as it moved through open space. Distant lights marked worlds that had known war longer than humans had known flight. This journey was not about conquest or trade. It was about survival, though few beyond the small human delegation understood that yet. Humanity had entered the galactic stage quietly. There had been no grand announcement, no show of force. Probes were sent first, then listening stations, then careful contact with minor powers at the edge of known space. What humans found was not a united galaxy, but a broken one. Alliances rose and fell, old grudges burned like dying stars, and entire species defined themselves by ancient wars they could no longer remember the beginning of. The neutral station ahead was one of the few places where weapons were banned and open violence was rare. Even so, it carried the weight of countless arguments and failed peace talks. John adjusted his jacket as the ship slowed. He was not a soldier. His strength was patience and his weapon was listening. Earth had chosen him for that reason. Captain Luke Mason stood nearby, calm and steady. His role was defense, but his orders were clear. No threats, no posturing. If things went wrong, he was to protect the crew and withdraw, not fight. Lisa Brown, the cultural expert, reviewed her notes one last time. She had spent years studying alien languages and customs, searching for common ground where none seemed to exist. As they docked, John felt the quiet tension spread through the ship. Every human aboard understood the risk. If this meeting failed, Earth would be labeled irrelevant at best, or dangerous at worst. Some in the human leadership believed staying hidden would be safer. Others believed silence would only invite future destruction. This meeting was the choice between those paths. The station interior was vast and strange. Curved walls shifted color slowly, responding to movement and sound. Beings of many shapes and sizes filled the halls. Some floated, some walked, some glided on mechanical limbs. Many glanced at the humans with mild interest, others with open doubt. Few saw them as equals. The council chamber was already loud when the humans arrived. Raised platforms circled a central space where speakers took turns shouting, signaling, or projecting emotion through light and sound. The conflict of the day was old, older than most species present. Two major powers argued over border systems that had changed hands dozens of times through bloodshed. John did not rush forward. He waited. He watched. Lisa quietly explained small details as they observed. Gestures of insult, tones of respect, patterns that repeated in every argument. It was never really about territory. It was about fear of weakness. When at last the humans were invited to speak, the chamber grew quieter but not silent. John stepped forward slowly. He did not raise his voice. He spoke of Earth not as a strong world but as a young one. He spoke of oceans crossed in fear, of nations divided by belief and pride. He spoke of wars that nearly ended human history. Some listeners dismissed his words as irrelevant. Others leaned in, curious despite themselves. He did not promise technology or fleets. He did not ask for protection. Instead, he asked a question that unsettled the chamber. How long had it been since anyone here remembered peace without preparing for the next war? There was no immediate answer. Anger flickered, but so did uncertainty. John continued, explaining that humanity had learned something painful. Endless victory still led to loss. Security built on fear always collapsed. Humans had not found peace because they were kind. They found it because they were tired of dying. Some council members laughed, others argued. One representative accused humans of weakness, claiming the galaxy respected only power. John nodded and agreed that power mattered. Then he asked what power had truly achieved so far. The argument resumed around him, louder than before. Captain Mason shifted slightly, ready but restrained. Lisa watched patterns change. The old debate was looping again, exactly as it always had. Then alarms sounded. Outside the station, two rival patrol fleets had drifted too close. Old reflexes took over. Weapons charged, shields flared. The council erupted into chaos as accusations flew. Many demanded the station choose a side or open fire. Humanity did neither. John turned to the council and made a quiet request. Allow humans to speak to both fleets. Laughter followed. What could a young species do where elders had failed? But time was short and desperation opened a small door. Using open channels, John spoke plainly. He told both fleets the same thing. If either fired, humanity would record it and leave. Earth would withdraw from all contact and warn others of a galaxy unable to control itself. There was no threat in his voice, only certainty. The pause that followed felt endless. The fleets hesitated, confused. This was not the response they expected. Finally, weapons powered down. The immediate crisis passed, leaving only embarrassment and unease. The council chamber fell silent. John did not claim victory. He simply stated that humans were willing to talk to anyone who wanted a different future. Not tomorrow, now. If no one joined them, humanity would still try alone. Later, as the delegation returned to their ship, Luke finally spoke. He admitted he had expected failure. Lisa said failure was still possible. John agreed. But something had shifted. For the first time, the galaxy had paused its endless motion toward war. Back on Earth, leaders watched recordings of the meeting. Reactions were mixed. Some called it reckless, others saw hope. Messages began to arrive from minor systems, curious about the humans who refused to choose sides. John stood once more by the window as stars drifted past. Humanity was small, fragile, but it carried something rare, the memory of near extinction and the stubborn belief that unity was not weakness. This was only the beginning. The galaxy would test that belief soon. But for the first time beyond Earth, humanity had spoken not with fear or pride but with honesty, and the stars had listened, if only for a moment. The silence after the council meeting did not last long. Messages flowed across the station and beyond it, carrying rumors about the humans who refused to threaten or beg. Some voices mocked them. Others were curious. A few were afraid, not of human strength, but of what their ideas could change. John Carter spent the next days moving through narrow halls and quiet chambers, meeting representatives who did not want to be seen in public with him. They came alone or with small escorts, speaking in low tones. They asked questions instead of making demands. Why would humans risk isolation? What did Earth gain from standing between enemies? John answered each question the same way. Humanity gained time. Time to talk, to understand, to avoid repeating old mistakes. Lisa Brown noticed patterns forming. The ones who approached them were not the strongest powers. They were smaller states, border worlds trading species that suffered whenever wars flared. These groups had survived by adapting, not conquering. Humanity felt familiar to them. Captain Luke Mason kept watch but rarely spoke. His crew followed strict orders to remain passive. Even so, scanners showed increased activity around the station. Distant fleets repositioned. Observers watched human movements closely. Some were clearly gathering information. Others were deciding whether humans were useful or dangerous. A formal invitation finally arrived. The Galactic Council requested humanity present a structured proposal, not a speech but a plan. John knew this was the real test. Words alone could inspire, but systems changed history. Back aboard the human ship, the small team worked without rest. Data filled the shared screens. Emma White joined them remotely from Earth, her calm voice guiding the discussion. She reminded them that humans once failed again and again before learning how fragile peace was. Agreements without trust collapsed. Trust without structure faded. Together they built the unity proposal. It was not a single treaty, it was a framework. Shared trade lanes protected by mixed patrols. Neutral mediation hubs staffed by multiple species. Open archives of historical conflicts, so lies could not easily rewrite the past. Most shocking of all, a mutual pause protocol. When violence reached a set threshold, all sides were required to halt action and enter mandatory talks. Many on Earth worried the proposal gave away too much, but John believed generosity was the point. Peace demanded sacrifice before it delivered safety. When the day came, the council chamber was fuller than before. Even rivals who barely acknowledged each other attended. The atmosphere was tense but focused. Humanity was no longer invisible. John presented the proposal slowly, letting translation systems keep pace. He did not hide the risks. The framework could fail. It could be abused. But so could any system built by living minds. What mattered was whether the galaxy wanted a future that was not shaped only by fear. Reactions were immediate and divided. Some representatives dismissed the plan as naive. Others accused humanity of attempting quiet control. A few asked practical questions, the kind that suggested real interest. Then news broke of violence. A clash had erupted near a contested star corridor. Two fleets exchanged fire and civilian traffic was trapped between them. The council chamber descended into noise. Blame spread faster than facts. Calls for retaliation echoed. John did something unexpected. He asked the council for permission to intervene under the unity proposal, even though it was not yet accepted. Shock rippled through the chamber. Humanity had no legal authority, no mandate. But the crisis demanded action. After heated debate, permission was granted, mostly because no one else wanted the responsibility. Luke's ship moved fast. Human communication channels opened wide, broadcasting clear warnings and offers of escort to civilian vessels. Sam Harris coordinated with station engineers to reroute traffic and stabilize failing jump gates. Human ships did not fire. They positioned themselves visibly between hostile lines, shields active but weapons cold. The message was simple: if you continue, you will have to go through us. Some commanders laughed, others hesitated. The pause protocol triggered alarms across shared networks. For the first time, automated systems enforced a halt rather than an attack. Minutes stretched into hours. Tensions remained high, but firing stopped. Evacuation corridors cleared. Lives were saved. When the situation finally stabilized, both fleets withdrew under watchful eyes. No victory songs played. No territory changed hands. But thousands lived who would have died. Back at the council, the mood had shifted again. Arguments continued, but now they carried weight. The unity proposal was no longer theory. It had acted. Opposition remained strong. Powerful empires feared loss of control. War industries whispered warnings, but smaller voices grew louder. They spoke of children saved, of trade ships returned home. John felt the strain of every conversation. Doubt crept in during quiet moments. Was humanity moving too fast? Was Earth ready for the consequences? Lisa reminded him that fear always followed change. Emma's voice returned with steady reassurance. History did not move without resistance. As days passed, provisional votes were cast. Nothing was final, nothing was secure, but enough support formed to continue talks. A temporary council was established to refine the framework, with humanity invited as mediator. Alone in his quarters, John watched distant stars drift slowly. He knew enemies were watching too. Peace did not make threats vanish. It changed how they appeared. Humanity had stepped into a role no one had asked for, but many now needed. The galaxy was not healed. It was still dangerous and divided. But cracks had formed in the old order. John closed his eyes, thinking of Earth, of oceans and cities and fragile lives depending on choices made far away. Part 2 of humanity's journey was underway, not marked by triumph but by responsibility. The stars were beginning to listen more closely now, and that attention carried both hope and danger. The weeks that followed tested every promise humanity had made. The temporary council met daily, sometimes hourly, as new disputes surfaced across the stars. Old enemies probed the edges of the unity framework, searching for weakness. Some wanted it to fail so the familiar order of fear could return. John Carter felt the weight of attention wherever he went. Friendly voices greeted him in private while public sessions grew sharper. Questions turned into challenges. Accusations grew more direct. Some claimed humans were manipulating events by placing themselves at the center. Others said Earth was too fragile to carry such responsibility. Lisa Brown tracked shifts in tone and behavior. She noticed how insults changed into tests. The galaxy was no longer dismissing humanity. It was measuring them. Every response mattered. Captain Luke Mason received reports of increased military movement far from the council chambers. Fleets trained under the cover of routine drills. Supply lines shifted. Someone was preparing for a future where peace talks failed. Sam Harris worked long hours with mixed crews on shared stations. Humans and aliens learned to solve problems together under pressure. Language barriers faded as hands and tools did the talking. Trust formed slowly, built from small successes. Then the sabotage began. It started with data errors. Historical records vanished or reappeared altered. Trade route maps showed false hazards. Mediation hubs experienced system failures during critical talks. No single source appeared responsible. Fear spread faster than facts. John called an emergency session. Instead of blaming any group, he asked for transparency. All systems were open to shared oversight. Some leaders resisted, but enough agreed to expose hidden channels. The act shocked many. Secrecy had been power for so long that giving it up felt dangerous. As investigations deepened, patterns emerged. Extremist factions from multiple species were working together. They shared one belief: peace would erase their influence. Before the Council could act, a major attack struck. A central station supporting the Unity framework lost power after an internal explosion. Sections depressurized. Alarms echoed across nearby systems. Panic followed close behind. Luke's ship diverted immediately. Human crews coordinated rescue efforts without waiting for permission. Sam led engineering teams through damaged corridors. Lisa worked with translators to guide trapped civilians. John remained in constant contact with the Council, refusing calls to withdraw. Some warned that this was a trap meant to make humanity look weak or reckless. John answered simply. Leaving now would prove every fear right. Inside the station, chaos ruled. Lights flickered. Gravity failed in bursts. Species that had never worked together before were forced into close contact. Fear turned into urgency. Sam reached the damaged core with a mixed team. The controls were unfamiliar, built by minds that thought differently. Instead of forcing solutions, Sam listened. Alien engineers explained their logic. Human engineers adapted quickly. Piece by piece, systems stabilized. Near an evacuation hub, Lisa helped calm a group of civilians trapped between rival guards. Old instincts urged violence. Lisa spoke softly, reminding them that survival mattered more than pride. Slowly, weapons lowered. Luke coordinated defensive screens without firing a shot. Human ships shielded evacuation routes, absorbing debris and stray blasts. Damage reports came in, but the line held. Hours later, power returned. The station survived. Casualties were far lower than expected. News spread fast. Footage of humans and aliens working side by side reached systems that had never trusted Council broadcasts. The story was not framed as heroism but cooperation. The investigation revealed the truth soon after. The sabotage network spanned dozens of worlds. Arrests followed. Some governments were embarrassed to discover extremists within their own ranks. The Council chamber filled again, but the mood had changed. Anger still burned, yet it was aimed inward now. Leaders faced the cost of endless division. Debate over the Unity framework reached a breaking point. Supporters demanded full adoption. Opponents warned of lost sovereignty. John listened, then spoke with visible exhaustion. He said humanity had not come to rule or replace anyone. They had come because they knew what happened when fear won. He admitted humans were afraid too, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being blamed, afraid of failing. Then he said something that unsettled the chamber. If the galaxy chose war again, humanity would not stop trying for peace, even alone, even if it meant being ignored or attacked. Because survival was not just about living longer, it was about living better. Silence followed. One by one, votes were cast, not enough for full unity but enough to move forward. The framework would expand. Mediation hubs would multiply. Shared patrols would grow. It was not victory, it was momentum. In quiet moments afterward, John felt doubt return. Enemies still watched. Some smiles hid knives. Lisa reminded him that peace was never clean. Luke reminded him that readiness mattered. Emma sent a message from Earth, simple and proud. Humanity had not solved the galaxy. It had changed the direction of its movement. As ships departed the station, mixed crews waved to each other. Trade lanes reopened under shared watch. Children on distant worlds slept through the night without sirens. John stood at the window once more. The stars felt closer now, not because they were friendly, but because they were paying attention. Part 3 of humanity's journey had been written in risk and sacrifice. The final test was still ahead, but something important had been proven. Unity was possible, even in a galaxy built on fear. The final decision did not come with celebration or applause. It came quietly, after long hours of debate and shared silence. The council chamber felt different now. less like a battlefield of words and more like a place where choices carried weight. John Carter stood among representatives who once refused to sit in the same space. Some still avoided eye contact. Others nodded with reserved respect. The unity framework rested before them, changed and shaped by many voices. It was no longer a human idea alone. It belonged to the galaxy. The vote passed by a narrow margin, enough to matter. The framework became official galactic policy. It did not erase borders or armies, but it changed how they were used. Mediation hubs gained authority. Pause protocols became law. Shared patrols expanded beyond trial status. No one claimed it was perfect. John felt relief mixed with fear. Peace had been chosen, but keeping it would be harder than winning any war. Responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. In the days that followed, the galaxy adjusted. Some systems resisted openly. Others complied in name only. But trade routes reopened with fewer escorts. Border skirmishes slowed. News streams showed meetings instead of battles. Human crews worked alongside alien teams across dozens of stations. Sam Harris oversaw repairs and upgrades, teaching and learning at the same time. Tools passed from hand to hand without hesitation. Laughter appeared in places once filled with tension. Lisa Brown focused on education exchanges. Stories replaced propaganda. Children learned about worlds beyond their own, not as enemies but as neighbors. Understanding grew slowly, but it grew. Captain Luke Mason never relaxed. He trained crews and strengthened defenses. Peace did not mean ignoring danger. It meant preparing without provoking. His calm presence reminded others that strength and restraint could exist together. Not everyone accepted the new order. A powerful coalition withdrew from council activity, declaring the framework a threat to sovereignty. Fleets gathered near disputed regions. Fear returned to many hearts. John requested a final address. He did not threaten. He did not plead. He spoke of choice. The galaxy could step back into the cycle of war, or it could test a new path. Humanity would not force unity. It would stand by it. Some walked out, others stayed. Days later, the feared conflict did not come. Instead, border worlds refused to support escalation. Traders rerouted around aggressive zones. Isolation followed those who chose fear. Pressure worked where force had failed. Months passed. The unity framework evolved. Mistakes were corrected. Failures were admitted openly. Trust deepened through honesty, not perfection. On Earth, cities watched the stars with cautious pride. Humanity had not become rulers or saviors. It had become a bridge. John returned home briefly. Oceans calmed him. Ordinary people thanked him quietly, then returned to their lives. That normalcy meant everything. When he went back to the stars, he did so knowing his role would end someday. Peace could not depend on one voice. Years later, historians would mark this period as a turning point. Not because wars vanished, but because war was no longer the first answer. The galactic order shifted slowly, like stars moving over ages. Cooperation became expected. Aggression became costly. In a quiet moment aboard a shared station, John watched ships of many designs depart together. No banners flew. No weapons glowed. Humanity had forged peace not through dominance, but through shared risk and shared hope. It was never about hello or threats. It was about saying together that the future was worth choosing. And the galaxy listened.